Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the small coastal town of Ravens Hollow, the fog rolled in like an uninvited guest, bringing with it a chilling sense of foreboding. As the mist settled on the weathered clapboard houses, it swirled around the bare branches of ancient oaks, plunging the streets into a muted twilight. Ravens Hollow had always been a place where secrets thrived, where whispers traveled faster than the autumn winds. And on this particular evening, the stillness was profound, a perfect backdrop for the dark tale that was about to unfold. The locals told stories of the ghostly silhouettes that roamed the cliffs, but today, it was not the supernatural that had cast a shadow over the town. A body had been discovered on the jagged rocks beneath the lighthouse, the tide relentlessly crashing against the stones, as if to erase any trace of the crime. Women who'd once met for coffee now exchanged hushed conversations. Their faces were drawn tight with fear as they avoided eye contact. Men with furrowed brows gathered outside the only bar, liquor bottles glinting ominously in the dim light, their whispers a mix of confusion and dread. Detective Clara Jensen stood at the edge of the scene, the salty air biting at her cheeks as she surveyed the body laid out stark against the gray stones. This was not just another misdemeanor in a town used to petty thefts and the occasional drunken brawl. This was murder, and the truth lurked just beneath the surface, entwined in the fog. The victim. As the pale light of dawn broke through the fog, an uneasy quiet settled over Ravens Hollow. Detective Clara Jensen knelt beside the body, her heart heavy as she examined the details. The victim, a young woman in her late 20s, was disturbingly out of place in the sea of rocks and froth. Her clothes were a simple but distinctive navy blue sundress, dirtied and torn, its hem muddied by the relentless surge of the tide. Clara's practiced eye took in the hair, dark and unruly, tangled with seaweed, framing a face marred by bruises that suggested a struggle. Ravens Hollow had its share of young adults drawn to its quaint charm, and Clara knew many by sight. This was Elizabeth Raines, a beloved waitress at the Tipsy Seagull, a local diner where everyone gathered not just for food, but for camaraderie. Her laugh was contagious. The ease with which she mingled with the customers made her a fixture in town. Now, that warmth was extinguished, replaced by an eerie stillness that sent shivers down Clara's spine. The initial autopsy would reveal the grim details, but Clara noted the faint mark on Elizabeth's wrist, a possible bracelet line that had seen better days, perhaps torn off during the struggle. The absence of personal belongings spoke volumes. A motive was lurking in the shadows, and it was Clara's duty to bring it to light. The echoes of Elizabeth's laughter haunted the detective as she stood, determination setting in. This quiet, foggy town would not evade justice, not while Clara was on the case. The crime scene. The crime scene was a delicate tapestry of clues woven into the fabric of the shoreline, each strand telling a story that begged to be unveiled. Detective Clara Jensen, flanked by uniformed officers, surveyed the area with meticulous care. The lighthouse stood sentinel above, casting a long shadow over the jagged rocks below where Elizabeth's body lay encased in a shroud of mystery. The initial evidence collection revealed scattered footprints in the soft sand, partially washed away by the relentless tide. Clara crouched down, her fingers ghosting over the impressions left behind, noting the size and pattern. A struggle had likely taken place here. The faint scuff marks on the rocks told their own story. The officers fanned out, documenting the scene with camera clicks breaking the otherwise eerie silence. Nearby, a section of the rocky outcrop caught Clara's attention. It was slick with something other than water. She approached. As she approached, the metallic scent hung heavy in the air, and a small smear of crimson caught her eye. It appeared Elizabeth had fought back, the evidence of desperation adding a visceral layer to the tragedy. This was where she had likely clawed at her assailant, leaving behind a fragment of the life she had fought fiercely to protect. The other officers were still combing through the area, looking for anything that could provide inside personal items, discarded belongings, traces of clothing. Clara knew that the answers could be right in front of them, hidden beneath layers of sand and surf, waiting for someone to peel them back. The waves roared like the voices of the townspeople, whispering Elizabeth's name into the morning breeze, reminding Clara of the urgency to uncover the truth and bring justice to a life so cruelly extinguished. The early investigation. With the sun climbing slowly overhead, Detective Clara Jensen returned to the precinct with the heavy weight of the morning's discoveries pressing against her chest. As she descended the narrow steps into the station, the usual buzz of small-town life seemed muted, overtaken by a solemn atmosphere thick with collective grief. Clara moved through the subdued chatter of her colleagues, her focus sharp as she prepared for the difficult task ahead. In her small, windowless office, she spread out the evidence collected from the crime scene photographs of Elizabeth, the footprints, the blood sample, and a small piece of fabric that had been snagged on the rock. Each item bore the weight of Elizabeth's untold story. Clara's attention particularly lingered on the fabric, a scrap of patterned cloth that seemed almost too vivid against the desolate backdrop, hinting at a struggle between light and dark. Over the next few days, Clara began peeling away the layers of Elizabeth's life. She coordinated interviews with her friends and family, each conversation revealing fragments of who Elizabeth was, her tender spirit, her dedication to the diner, and her dream of traveling to Paris. They painted a picture of a woman imbued with hope, yet some spoke of her recent unease, whispers of a shadow lurking in her life. A former boyfriend, Ben, mentioned that he had noticed how she would frequently look over her shoulder, anxious and restless. Clara compiled her notes, recognizing a pattern of concern echoed by many. The townsfolk marveled at the nature of small community show they usually foster safety, yet could also breed suspicion. Someone might have been watching Elizabeth, weaving an unseen thread into her life, until it snapped on that fateful night. The detective reared back at the realization someone in Raven's Hollow had known her secret. The dead ends. The day stretched into a blur as Detective Clara Jensen delved deeper into Elizabeth Rain's world. She meticulously followed each lead, yet with every interview and investigation, frustration began to seep into her relentless pursuit of answers. The whispers of the townspeople grew louder, filled with speculations that danced just beyond the reach of clarity. Raven's Hollow had its tribulations, but as Clara scratched the surface, she realized this case was more intricate than she had anticipated. Clara met with Ben, the ex-boyfriend, who had been tightly wound with frustration over his inability to protect her. He insisted he had never threatened her or had any desire to harm her, claiming his only fault was his inability to truly understand the turmoil Elizabeth had been experiencing. He spoke of rumors surrounding her, hints of a stalker, but when pressed for specifics, he faltered, his memory shrouded in uncertainty. Next, She visited the diner where Elizabeth used to work. The Tipsy Seagull, adorned with chipped nautical decor and the aroma of fried food, had been a second home for her. The owner, Marla, teetered on the brink of tears, recollecting moments of joy mingled with unease. But when Clara inquired about the rumored stalker, she could offer no concrete evidence, only fragmented stories of Elizabeth's anxiety and surprising, in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Yet each avenue seemed to lead to a brick wall, leaving Clara grappling with a sense of helplessness. The fabric snagged on the rock remained a mystery, and the blood sample was inconclusive. With hope waning, Clara stared at her cluttered desk, where the evidence board now littered with photos, and strings felt more like a web of confusion than a path to clarity. Each name she encountered led her nowhere, and with dread clinging to her thoughts, the looming weight of Elizabeth's unsolved murder pressed heavy upon her heart. A break in the case. Just as doubt began to cloud her resolve, Clara Jensen received a call that sent a ripple of hope through her veins. It was Officer McCarthy from the local forensics department, the urgency in his voice unmistakable. A new lead had emerged, a witness who claimed to have seen something unusual at the cliffs on the night Elizabeth died. Clara's heart raced as she scribbled down the details. The glimmer of potential truth would reignite her purpose. Within the hour, Clara met Roger, a fisherman who frequented the tide pools just below the cliffs. His weathered hands and sun-kissed skin told tales of a life spent at sea, yet his expression was grave. As she approached, he nodded, clearly troubled. He had been out pulling in his traps when he noticed an unfamiliar car, parked near the lighthouse, an old, rusted sedan that stood out against the backdrop of the coastal gray. "Was it there long?" Clara pressed, sensing that this could be the key to unraveling the mystery of Elizabeth's death. "Long enough," Roger replied, his brow furrowing. "I didn't pay it much mind until I saw someone leaving. A girl, I think, rushing, looking over her shoulder, like she was afraid. Then a minute later, I saw someone else at all, in a dark coat. Didn't want to be seen." Clara's mind raced as Roger continued to recount the scene, but she couldn't shake the pressing urgency of time. "Did you see a license plate? Anything distinctive?" she asked, her tone sharpened with determination. "Couldn't see the plate, but I remember the color yellow. Bright like a sunflower," he said, shaking his head slightly as if trying to dislodge the memory. A rush of adrenaline coursed through Clara as she scribbled down every detail. This would lead somewhere, she could feel it. As she left the rundown pier, the salt air seemed fresher, the fog less suffocating. Raven's Hollow still harbored its secrets, but perhaps now they were on the cusp of unveiling a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. The suspect. Detective Clara Jensen returned to the precinct, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts as she processed the significance of Roger's eyewitness account. The sharp image of a yellow sedan tugged at memories of her earlier interviews. It matched the description of a car owned by someone in town whose name had surfaced in hushed conversations. That name was Nathan Blakea, recently released convict, known for his temper and past offenses against women. Determined to follow this lead, Clara quickly gathered her notes on Nathan. He was rarely seen without a scowl, his movements sometimes unstable, and the townsfolk whispered about his propensity for violence. The more Clara reviewed the evidence, the more she felt the weight of suspicion pressing upon her. Roger's sighting aligned perfectly with the timeline of Elizabeth's disappearance, beside the very cliffs where her life had brutally ended. Clara organized a team of officers and headed to Nathan's address, a rundown apartment that looked as weary as its occupant. The once vibrant yellow paint had dulled, peeling away like the dignity Nathan had lost in his incarceration. The air grew thick with expectation as they approached the door, exchanging tense glances. With a steady hand, Clara knocked firmly, the sound echoing like a drum in her heart. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing Nathan's disheveled appearance, the dark shadows under his eyes, messy hair, and a frown that deepened at the sight of law enforcement. Clara wasted no time, diving right into questioning, scanning his body language for signs of guilt. Nathan's responses were defensive, filled with half-truths and evasions. He claimed he'd been home alone the night Elizabeth died, but Clara noticed his gaze darting away whenever she pressed him about the cliffs. As the interrogation continued, Clara felt the sting of uncertainty pierce her confidence. No solid evidence linked him to the crime, yet his demeanor and the circumstantial details painted a vivid picture of deceit. She couldn't shake the idea that they were inching closer to the truth, yet how close they remained depended on her ability to uncover the flaw in Nathan's facade. The trial. Months passed since the events that would forever change Raven's Hollow, yet their echo still reverberated through the heart of the town. Detective Clara Jensen found herself seated in a packed courtroom, the air thick with tension as the trial of Nathan Blake commenced. The yellowing walls echoed with whispers of anticipation and dread, with a mixture of grief for Elizabeth Raines and hope for justice filling the space. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, embarking on a journey that relayed the intimate details of Elizabeth's final hours. Clara watched as evidence was presented: Roger's witness account, the blood sample linked to Nathan, and the jagged fabric that had unearthed memories of fear and struggle. Each detail illuminated the dark corners of the case, while Elizabeth's family sat in the front row, their faces painted with anguish. Clara felt a familiar heaviness in her chest, echoing the very first moments she had discovered Elizabeth's lifeless body. On the defense side, Nathan's lawyer was equally relentless, weaving a narrative of reasonable doubt. It painted Nathan as a man trying to reclaim his life, a label on the wrong side of society's judgment. Clara clenched her fists as she listened to testimony designed to distract the jury from the cold truth. It was difficult to witness Nathan's manipulation unfold, crafted to cast shadows over the tangible evidence linking him to the crime. As the trial progressed, Clara's determination strengthened. She understood the stakes. This wasn't just about Nathan. It was about Elizabeth and a community searching for closure. In those moments spent in the courtroom, the echoes of her laughs, her dreams, and her innocence consumed Clara's thoughts. The town buried its collective heartache beneath layers of fog, but justice for Elizabeth was the thin beam of light she aimed to reach. The final arguments loomed, leaving Clara with a crippling mixture of hope and fear. Would justice prevail, or would Nathan escape the accountability that hovered over him like a dark cloud? Raven's Hollow held its breath, waiting for the verdict that would define the very fabric of their community. The aftermath. The verdict reverberated through the confines of the courtroom, like a mournful bell tolling in the distance. Clara Jensen watched as the jury filed back, their expressions a solemn mix of determination and uncertainty. When the foreman stood to announce guilty for Nathan Blake, a collective sigh escaped the audience. intertwined with a wave of grief. It was a bittersweet moment. The community had achieved justice, yet the loss of Elizabeth Raines was a scar they would carry forever. In the weeks following the trial, Ravens Hollow struggled to recuperate from the soul-shattering events that had unfolded in their midst. The community came together in support, candles lining the town square in memory of Elizabeth, a life that had been snuffed out far too soon. Clara walked through the crowd, the flickering lights illuminating faces that once beamed with joy, but now bore the weight of profound sorrow. The murder had left an indelible mark, altering the fabric of what they thought they knew about safety and trust in their tight-knit town. Detective Jensen found herself reflecting on the people impacted by Elizabeth's death: her friends, her family, the townsfolk who had once shared laughter at the Tipsy Seagull. These thoughts weighed heavily on her as she retraced the steps that had led her to uncover the truth. The small victories throughout the investigation felt overshadowed by the stark reality that no amount of sleuthing could bring Elizabeth back to those who loved her. While Nathan was sentenced to a long prison term, his very existence was a reminder of the monster that lurked beneath the surface of community life. The town would have to rebuild trust, learn to understand that true safety could not be guaranteed. As Clara stood in the flickering glow of candles, she felt the convergence of hope and despair still echoing in her heart. She knew one thing: stories of Elizabeth would not fade into whispers among the oaks or drown in the tides of time. They would be shared, retold, and kept alive in vibrant memories through the lives she had touched. Ravens Hollow would heal, slowly but surely, and in that resilience lay the strength of a community reborn. Reflection. In the quiet moments that followed the verdict, Detective Clara Jensen found herself drifting through the echoes of her investigation, contemplating the lessons woven into the tragedy of Elizabeth Raines. She walked along the familiar coastal path, the ocean waves crashing rhythmically against the shore, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had infiltrated the town. The salty air filled her lungs, grounding her in the reality of the life she inhabited, a place still marred by fear and loss, but also tinged with resilience. As she gazed out over the turbulent water, Clara reflected on the volumes of emotions she had faced throughout the case. The abhorrence toward violence, the sorrow for the life cut short, and ultimately, the glimmers of hope that emerged from the chaos. For all the darkness she encountered, there had also been a sense of community, understanding, and unity that sparked from shared suffering. Elizabeth's death became, in a twisted way, a catalyst for healing, encouraging the townsfolk to come together and find solace amid grief. Clara knew that moving forward meant honoring Elizabeth's memory, carrying her story through her work, and ensuring the lessons learned were never forgotten. The case had tested her in ways she had never anticipated, revealing not just the fragility of life, but also the strength of the human spirit when faced with adversity. She understood now that even in silence, the scars of tragedy could foster growth, compassion, and a lasting legacy of resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, cloaking Ravens Hollow in a warm glow, Clara turned away from the water and set her sights on the town ahead. Together, they would keep Elizabeth's memory alive, transforming heartbreak into a manifesto of survival, sharing experiences that would redefine their understanding of safety, love, and community.